Hey guys, welcome back. This is Library of Orthanc, LOTR TCG, back with another all-foil deck tech video. We're working our way through the 2004 movie block decks still, and this is the third place from the top 8. We've already done the World Champion and the runner-up. This is now the third place. And today we have for you Knights. So this is a very cool deck. I guess just a couple things about Knights in general that I would say is, number one, I'd say this is probably the most difficult movie block deck to play, just because of the sequencing and all the actions that you have available. And then number two, so yeah, I'd say it's more of like the complexity level of like an expanded deck. You know, that kind of level of understanding of your cards is going to be required. And then number two, I'd say this is also the most synergistic deck, meaning of any deck, this is definitely not just like a pile of good mains. This is actually kind of like a pile of odd, mediocre cards that all work really well together. So this is huge on synergy, whereas the individual cards are not going to be the best characters or the best version of those characters, but they really work well together. So you already saw we have Isildur for our Ringbearer, and of course with the gorgeous answer to all riddles to boost up his vitality. And the one very critical thing to remember about Isildur is he has a very relevant bonus for this deck in particular. And that is, while Isildur bears the one ring, or an artifact, but in this case, of course, the one ring, each knight is strength +1. So Isildur himself is not a knight, but almost every other card in this deck is. So that's going to just give us like a global +1 to all our characters, which is huge. So getting right into those companions. First off, for our starting fellowship, we have Alcarin, Warrior of Lamedon. And so he has the nice effect that twilight cost of each other knight in your starting fellowship is -1. So he's going to let us add another knight into the fellowship with him. And then he also has the ability of assign Alcarin to a minion bearing a fortification to heal Alcarin. So he can get some nice healing when you use him with your fortifications. Then Turgon is our other starting man. Creepy looking dude with those eyes. So he is to play spot a knight, which obviously you do since Alcarin is a knight. And then his effect is maneuver, exert Turgon to wound a minion bearing a fortification. That's a very crucial ability in this deck, and just to have it printed right on the character is very good. So there is our starting fellowship. Like I said, a bunch of odd Gondor men basically, but that's what you're going to see for our starting fellowship there. And it, you know, that's the sequence, of course. So there is our starting fellowship. Then for our other companions, this is a super fun card, this next guy. Faramir, the Defender of Osgiliath. So you might not be that familiar with this Faramir, but of course he is a knight. And then he also has the ability of when you play Faramir, except in your starting fellowship, you may reveal the top 10 cards of your deck. So I don't think there's anything quite like this in the game where you get to reveal 10 cards. And then you may play a knight revealed and shuffle your deck. So this is kind of very similar to like search for a knight and play it. It's just you only get to search the top 10 cards of your deck. So he comes down and basically lets you, kind of examine that whole top 10 cards and find your best knight. So since he's key, we do have 2 copies of him. But that's just a very nice, he's a knight, and then he searches for more knights. Then our next knight, yes, there is a knight version of Aragorn. This, I think, is a foil error that appears on all the cards. It's really too bad because it's a beautiful card, but you'll see here this stripe along the edge. That's supposed to be foiling Anduril there and would just look gorgeous, but unfortunately it missed, and it's foiling the sky and a third of Anduril. But either way, gorgeous card. Aragorn, the captain of Gondor, and he, of course, as I said, is the knight version of Aragorn. And then he has the effect of, at the start of each fellowship phase, you may add 2 to heal another Gondor companion. So you'll notice this deck does a ton of healing, a ton of exerting, and vice versa. You know, you heal, you exert, you heal, you exert, you heal. That's really the point of this deck, is to get as much healing in as you can. So Aragorn helps with that incrementally, but of course is just in there for being a knight. Another famous knight here, Imrahil, the Prince of Dol Amroth. He is also a knight, and again, he's requires you to spot a knight to play him, but not at all a problem, of course, in this deck. And then each time he wins a skirmish, you may exert 2 minions. So you're usually going to want to, you know, skirmish him out first, get some exertions on other minions, so that when you come around and skirmish them later with other people, you take advantage of those exertions. So that's Imrahil. Like I said, you're already probably starting to see just on the companions the potential sequencing that can have to occur here. Then we have the Garrison of Gondor. This one has a strict spotting requirement, but again, not a problem in this deck to play spot 3 Gondor companions. And it is also going to be pretty much guaranteed defender +1 because of the vast amount of fortifications we play. But it basically says if you spot a fortification, it is defender +1. And also don't ever forget, you know, because it's kind of an ability you wouldn't expect. Well, you would based on the art, but you wouldn't expect just normal Gondor men to just be an archer. He is an archer natively, so don't forget to enforce your exertion for him being an archer in the archery phase. And our last guy here is also a knight. His effect is discard a fortification to heal Ingold twice. I don't know if there's a loop at all with that, but again, it's just discarding one of your fortifications and getting 2 heals off of it. So very good, especially if you have, you know, you'll notice in here some of our fortifications are unique, and we've got to get rid of them anyway to be able to play a new one. So that's a great way to discard those unique fortifications, get 2 heals on this guy, and then replay the extra copy we have in our hand. And lastly, no surprise here, it's movie block. We have 1 copy of Sam, the son of Hamfast, just to keep burdens under control. So that is our companions. Moving on then to our possessions. So we got a decent amount of possessions in this deck, and again, some very unique cards that if you don't play knights, you don't know, but if you do play knights, you'll be very familiar with. The first one is the Banner of Westernesse. This says bearer must be a Gondor companion, and each time bearer wins a skirmish, you may heal another Gondor companion. So you can't self-heal, but you can heal anyone else with it, and that's every time you win a skirmish. So this just adds up to be a ton of healing. And then as a response action, you'll notice this is not hugely relevant unless you're playing against typically either Dunland or Besiegers are going to be the 2. But it'll be hugely relevant in those 2 matchups, just huge. And that is when you win a skirmish, you may discard this possession to liberate a site. So site liberation is very rare and usually only on, you know, janky cards. So being able to just liberate a site at will make this a very strong matchup for against Dunland in particular, and then it'll help certainly against Besiegers. So we do play a full play set of that Banner of Westernesse. Fantastic card, and just get them on your best companion and then just go down the line. Since, you know, it triggers from winning a skirmish, basically look for your most powerful guy and then next most and so forth as you draw those. Next one is the Gondor Bow. So the Gondor Bow basically does a couple things. One, kind of cool, it does give you strength +1, so it's pretty much like it has a +1 over here because everyone is a knight. But it really has the same ability that we saw on Turgon, which was exert to wound a minion bearing a fortification. And you'll read this, exert bearer to wound a minion. He is skirmishing if that minion bears a fortification. So Turgon's in the maneuver, this is in the skirmish, but it's the exact same idea. If a minion is bearing a fortification, you get to exert to wound it. And again, cool looking card there, but very essential to get this on the guys that you're going to be healing. And then, you know, exert to wound is always a very good ability, especially with the vast amount of healing in this deck. So we do run 3 of those, not a full play set, but we got 3 of those. Then Lastly, we got a couple of these Knight's Mounts. Again, these add 1 power. And again, you can stack a Gondor Bow and a Knight's Mount and a banner, because the banner is a hand weapon, the mount, of course, is a mount, and the bow is a ranged weapon. So remember, you can have a guy holding all of these. So basically, you'll get their printed strength, +1 off Isildur, +1 off the bow, +1 off the mount. So you're basically going to be printed strength +3 if you bear these 2 guys, and then that makes you much more likely to win a skirmish and be able to heal. So some nice combos there. But back to what that card actually does, in addition to giving you this +1 strength, is it does also say each time bearer wins a skirmish, you may wound a minion who is not assigned to a skirmish. So the key there is not assigned to a skirmish doesn't have to mean like, oh, they're trying to swarm you and they have an extra minion. It means that you can have already fought the person, so they are no longer assigned once the fight is completed. And then basically, so you do 1 skirmish over here, let that resolve, then you can wound that minion from that skirmish when you use this in your second skirmish. So very nice trick there, but again, it makes the sequencing of the skirmishes a lot more important, because the guy that you want to wound, you got to run their skirmish first, then run this guy's skirmish second. So got a couple of those Knight's Mounts. Like I said, you can probably already see here the complexity. This is much more complex than your average king block deck, and requires a lot of... You're going to want to study the cards and know what these cards actually say, because there's so many relevant possible actions that you could be taking here. Now, the next thing to get into is all of our fortification conditions. So first off, I'm going to show you all the fortifications that pertain to wounding. So you probably saw there was a lot of exert to wound type abilities in there. So let's look at the fortifications that do that. So how fortifications work is their support area conditions. So when you get them, you just freely play them to the table. Many of them are also non-unique, such as this one, the 4th level. And this one, you can exert 2 men or spot 3 knights. And that's the whole key with knights, is that we're always looking for the alternate spotting the knights to be able to transfer this. So we don't have to exert our men. We literally just spot 3 knights, and we can just freely transfer this from our support area to a minion during the skirmish phase. And what this one will do is it will just exhaust that minion. So this gives you an exhaustion. It's non-unique. It is no cost to transfer once you've got those 3 knights down. So this is our best one. You know, reminds me a lot of Smeagol always helps. So you just get to exhaust any minion, but we get to do that with a non-unique support area condition. So we got a full 4 of those 4th levels. Then in addition to that, these 2 are well-known cards. The next 2 that I'm going to show you, one is the Citadel of the Stars. Like I said, these are unique, so make sure you're watching and managing that properly, because you can only have 1 of these down. But this one's pretty well-known. But again, what might not be well-known is you're probably used to exerting a man to do this, but in this one, again, you can spot 3 knights to transfer, so it does not require the exertion. And this just wound a minion skirmishing your Gondor man. So this finishes off the wound. So that would be another example of like those 2 together kills any minion. Or like I said, 4th level with anyone who is bearing a Gondor Bow also will kill any minion, because this one says wound a minion if it's bearing a fortification. Well, of course, you give them to this, you give them the 4th level, it exhausts them, and then you exert to wound them with the Gondor Bow. So there's another great combo there, but there's that combo different times over in this deck. You know, you could do it with a Knight's Mount after the skirmish. You exhaust them and then do it after the skirmish, but again, usually you're probably going to want to be doing it, you know, during the skirmish with something like a Gondor Bow or a Citadel of the Stars, that sort of thing. So then next thing that we have there, again, very similar, is the Stone Tower. So the Stone Tower, this one actually does not have an alternate cost, so I'd say it's not as good for you, but it does have the -2. So if you have a lower vitality minion, you can potentially just wipe them out completely with a Stone Tower. And again, I didn't mention, but these are keyword fortifications. Again, not typically highly relevant else outside of this deck, but other than there is a Site 3 that lets you play fortifications. But other than that, yeah, both of these are fortifications. This one does not have the alternate spot requirement, though, so this one will actually require 2 exertions. So this is definitely on the more expensive side for you. And it's unique, but again, you can just pay 1 for it and let it sit in your support area. So there's the Stone Tower. And then lastly, this is not a condition, but it goes along with the strategy I was just mentioning, which is the Men of Numenor. It's an event that simply just says skirmish, wound a minion bearing a fortification. So exactly, going along with that 4th level, another combo, you play the 4th level on the minion, and then you play Men of Numenor for free. Again, doesn't even require an exertion. It's just a 0-cost skirmish event. So you just attach the 4th level to the minion, play Men of Numenor, they're gone. So great combo there. So got a couple of those. Don't want to overload on those because you've got other ways to do it, but you got a couple of those in here. Now we are moving on to the rest of our fortifications, but these are fortifications that rather than wounding a minion, they just add strength. So these are like our pump type conditions. So first off, we've got the Garrison of Osgiliath. So this one is just you get 2 tokens on it, and you can remove a token to make a man strength +1. Definitely think this is one of your weaker conditions, and I'm a little surprised even that we're playing 2 of that. But it being able to spray +1 pumps is better than you would think that it is. And next one is the 5th level. So this one is Bearer is strength -1 for each fortification you can spot. So this is much better because this can give some massive power reductions if that's required to get a skirmish win. Each fortification you can spot is going to be quite a few. And then this also does have the alternate cost of the spot 3 knights to transfer. So you can do that literally for free. So I'd kind of think of it as like a, could be up to, -5 type pump for no exertion. And you can just put it in your, again, these are great because you just put it in your support area and then you pull it out whenever you want. So short of someone like playing Saruman's Power and just cleaning out your support area, this would be very weak against a deck that's able to do that, but that was very not a popular strategy during movie block. So short of someone wiping out your entire support area conditions, this deck is just going to be a menace. So we do have 2 copies of the 5th level. And then lastly, you'll see it doesn't matter so much with a lot of these fortifications how frequently we recur them, because we do have the 6th level, 3 copies of this. And basically what this says is exert a man to play a fortification from your discard pile, limit 1. Now remember how limit 1 works is this is a non-unique card, so you could have up to 3 of these down. And if you did, it's limit 1 per copy of the card. So if you have 3 copies of the 6th level down, you could exert a man, exert a man, exert a man, and basically get back 3 fortifications. And you're actually playing them from your discard piles. Why that's key is, if you're double moving, you get them back for the second move. If you're going to regroup anyway, the Twilight's not even going to matter. You can just play your, expensive conditions out of your discard pile and add the Twilight, and the Twilight will just end up going away. So playing conditions from your discard pile during the regroup phase is a very strong ability. And this just gets back any of those fortifications that you need. So this is how you're going to get a lot of extra wounds on yourself, honestly, and that's why the healing is so critical, is because you're just in the regroup phase, you're always going to maximize this, and then you're going to use your healing abilities to re-heal the people that you were exerting to get back your fortifications. So like I said, for many times, so many actions that you can take in this deck, and it's really critical that you know what your key cards are, what they're allowed to do, maximize your exertions, maximize your healings, because there's just stuff going all over the place here, from support area, discard pile, exert, heal, return. It's very, not necessarily a loop, but it feels like, it's not an infinite loop by any means, but it feels very loopy when you play it. So that is the deck. I did pair this with a different shadow side, because for the the person who played this also played Besiegers, and we've already seen a Besieger deck, so I didn't wish to show you guys another Besieger deck. So what I paired it with is another popular movie block deck, and that is Dunland. You know, we were talking a lot about the site liberation and so forth. So Dunland is a bad matchup for knights, but it, you know, in terms of pairing them together, there's no reason you can't pair them together. So Dunland, I think most of you are familiar with, but I'll give you a quick overview of this because I don't think I've ever done a full overview of movie block Dunland. So movie block Dunland, the main point of this deck is to control 2 sites. So how you do that is with your characters, actually, just their printed abilities. So the key one is Freka, the Hungry Savage from Reflections. He has the ability of, when you play Freka, spot another man to take control of a site. The key thing here is don't be stupid. Don't just throw him down first and forget, you know, get another man down, Dunland man down first, and then play this guy, because it's literally a triggered ability on being played. So just make sure that there is a guy down a different guy down when you play that. And that just gives you your first site automatically. And so then if your opponent kills him, you've got to give back the site. But that's part of it, is you try to keep your Freka alive so you don't have to give back the site. And also, it enables you to get your first site control free, because regardless, he's typically not going to be killed, at least until archery phase, but hopefully not even until skirmish phase, or hopefully not at all. So we do have full 4 copies of Freka, the Hungry Savage. This one, I always thought the foiling was weird, but the only thing that's foiled is like the blood that's in his hand, and then that little corner up there. So there is 4 copies of that. Then we have our other key site controller is the Hillman Tribe. His effect is each time this minion wins a skirmish, you may spot another minion, another Dunland minion, to take control of a site. So again, he's got to win a skirmish and have someone else alive on the table. So that's a little harder, but that's still the best that you can do. Then Wolf, similar effect is if another man wins a skirmish, exert Wolf to take control of a site. So this is where, again, your opponent can try to skirmish Wolf first, though, and get a wound on him so that you can't exert him. But that's what you either win a skirmish with Wolf or use your hides. So there's going to be different ways to do that. And I do have 3 copies of him. I think the deck only played 2, but I upped this to 35 cards. I didn't mention that. That Knights deck we just looked at is 35 cards. So I had to add a couple cards into my Dunland to round it up to 35. Dunland's usually a little slimmer, so I did add a 3rd copy of Wolf. Then this is your key payoff. So those ones that you just saw, this is all about how to control a site. Freka, Hillman Tribe, Wolf. And again, we'll look at the other tricks later on with, war clubs and burn every village to help these guys actually win. But these are the guys that help you control the site. Then once you've controlled 2 of those sites, this is the huge payoff of your deck. It's the Dunlending Elder. He says, if you control 2 sites, this minion is strength +5, fierce, and damage +1. So this little grandpa turns into a mini Balrog when you control 2 sites. So he's a 12 power, damage +1, fierce, and only costs 2. So that's just an absolute beast, and anyone who's played with Dunland knows that's your objective. You're trying to get and recur elders. Excuse me. Then got 1 copy in here of the Hillman Horde. This is just a powerful card if you control lots of sites. Again, skip the archery phase if you control 2, that's helpful. If you control 3, everyone becomes fierce. If you control 4, everyone becomes damage +1. So kind of just a big high-end payoff card that we just play 1 copy of. And this one is super cool how the torches are foil. Then we have Saruman, the Rabble-Rouser. I'd say this is probably one of the weaker Sarumans, but it's very tailored, of course, for this deck. Again, kind of the classic cannot be assigned to a skirmish ability, and then each time the Free People's player moves, you can exert a companion for each Dunland man you can spot. That kind of just helps get some wounds on before you start raining elders. But most importantly, he's in here for this last ability, which is exert Saruman to make a man strength +2. So obviously, if he's not getting touched, that gives you +6 or 3 different +2s that you can sprinkle in. It makes it very hard to lose those skirmishes then with your Frekas or your wolves or tribes. So that's really what he's here for, is to make sure you win those skirmishes with that ability. So we've got a couple of those in here. 1 copy of Ullair and Kea. Again, this is just for fellowship size control because there's nothing else in this deck that would do that. And, you know, definitely worthwhile just to play one of those. Then I mentioned earlier the War Club. We do have 2 copies of the War Club. This is a menace for possessions too, actually, because when you win a skirmish, you may discard 2 free people's possessions. So that can actually really hurt them if you can get some chain some skirmish wins together with that and kind of clear out a lot of their possessions. But largely it's in here as a 0-cost power buff to help your Dunland men win skirmishes. Then this, of course, is the staple of Dunland, the hides. Never leave home without 4 copies. And as you guys know, this just plays your support area. When you play it, draw a card. Don't forget to do that. You know, play, draw every time you play a hides. And then, very importantly, if a Dunland man is about to take a wound, remove 2 or discard this possession to prevent that wound. Ideally, you're going to be using the remove 2 so that you can start build these up. But, you know, if you have to discard a hides to win a key skirmish, or I should say to like prevent a wound on Wolf or prevent a wound on Freka to keep him alive, absolutely do it. You know, do what you have to get that second sight controlled. So that's what these are for. Then very key card, this is the key strategy of recurring your elders, and that is the Ready to Fall. It just plays to your support area, and again, it has the requirement that you control 2 sites, but once you control 2 sites, you can remove 2 to play a Dunland man from your discard pile. So once you have this down, and once you control 2 sites, pretty much all you're doing is however many elders you have in your discard pile, you're just playing out every single elder you have every turn. Because there's not going to be anything better than that for 4 Twilight, and it doesn't even use a card. Just pull it out of your discard pile, play it. So that's just absolutely huge. I upped this to 3 copies too. I actually think 3 is the right number of this because this is such a key card for your deck. Then the other alternative backup way, other than Ready to Fall, to get back minions is Constantly Threatening. The nice thing with this is you don't have to control any sites to do this. All that you have to do to trigger this is that the fellowship has to have moved more than once this turn. However, you know, if you didn't control 2 sites, you wouldn't be going after the elders anyway. So early on, you could use this to get back your key, you know, Frekas or Wolves. But later on, it's just another duplicate way to get back elders. Then this is actually very key to control your second site also. This is a very interesting card. It's Over the Ison, and it says plays to your support area, and during the assignment phase, you can spot a site you control. So this one requires only 1 site to function. So as long as you control 1 site, and like I said, you put down Freka, you control 1 site. As long as he survives the archery phase, you automatically control a site because you have Freka. When he entered the battle, when you played him, you got to control a site. And so you already have that 1 site, so now you have the free ability of remove 2 to assign a man to an unbound companion. And so that's where you're going to take your powerful guy, put it on your opponent's weak guy, and that makes sure that Freka stays alive. Or it makes sure that Wolf stays alive. So you've got a lot of different ways to, when you get to choose who your good guy skirmishes, that's going to be huge for you. And that's going to really make sure that you do get to control that second site, because if Freka loses, he's got to give back the site. But this makes sure you put him on someone he's not going to lose to. Or like I said, if you're using it with Wolf, same thing, put him on someone he's not going to lose to so that you can make sure that he has his exert ability available for when someone wins a skirmish to take control of a site. So that is Over the Ison, very key card. And then the very last card we have here is 4 copies of Burn Every Village. This is just huge because it's a 0 cost plus 2 pump. Throw it down wherever you need it to. But most importantly, again, if you control 1 site, this becomes a +4. So again, the things to remember when you control one site is over the Ison and burn every village. Those all trigger just off of one site. And then really the key is, you know, a lot of people call this two-site Dunland. I just call it Dunland. I don't know there's any other good way to play it. This is far and away the best Dunland. So the whole goal is to control two sites and rain down elders on people. So I'm just going to go ahead and do up my... let's give it to Wolf this time. Do up my thumbnail here of the cool foils that are in this deck. And Knights will be an interesting one because there's not necessarily a ton of good cards. So I'm just going to give you the ones that are good for you because like we were talking about, the theme of Knights is kind of that you're playing with some cards that are not as good or not usually seen in the deck. So, well, got a big glare on Faramir there, so we're going to have to adjust that a little bit. But other than that, should be a nice thumbnail for us there. Let's see if I can get any more side light on here. Not really. So there is our deck. The Knights combined with Dunland. Like I said, that the Knights deck was the third place deck at Worlds 2004, and the Dunland was another deck from Worlds. I took it from Brian Fred's list because he was playing Elves and Men, and we're already seeing an Elves and Men deck too, so we're not going to be rerunning that. So at this point, I am starting to combine different half decks together so that you can see a viable deck, but it's not necessarily the exact deck that was played because I don't need to show you guys tons of extra copies of Elves and Men or tons of extra Besiegers or whatnot. So just making sure we get the best variety here. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe to our channel. We just crossed over 300 subscribers, so thank you for everyone for your support on that, and let's get it to 400. So keep liking, watching, and subscribing. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Little addendum to the video here. I realize we missed our Sitepath, so I definitely want to clip this on to the end. So for our Knights, starting off at the Steps of Edoras, this is nice because, again, it just gives every Gondor companion Defender +1. So that's our Site 1. Then our Site 2 is the West Road. If the Shadow has initiative, the Shadow number of this site is +3. So again, when your opponent plays out a lot of cards at Site 1, suddenly you get 6 there, which is like enough to play a Freka, for example. And then the Base of Mindolluin. So this is the one I was mentioning actually about the Site 3 that plays fortifications. So of course we play it in this deck. It's actually a really cool tech to play this in like an Elves and Men deck or whatever too, just to be able to play out your one copy of Citadel of the Stars and your one copy of Stone Tower. But obviously in this deck you can, depending on how aggressive you want to get with the threats, you can for sure get your 2 fortifications out, whichever are going to be necessary for you. So that's really nice if you get to play your Site 3. Site 4, kind of just the standard remove a burden to make a minion strength +2. Again, Dunland likes to get their pumps wherever they can, and they don't care about burdens. So you definitely want to do that to help you win a skirmish. The Crash Gate, again, this is a site Besiegers love, Dunland absolutely loves, because this one just says my opponent has to either add 3 threats or take control of a site. Against Dunland, it's absolutely correct to add 3 threats, but what that means is once I control 2 sites and once I hit you with my first barrage of Elders, you are going to be taking 3 threats when that first Elder kills that first companion. So that's going to be brutal for you either way. Minas Tirith, the 6th circle. Again, this is heal each Gondor companion. Absolutely huge for this deck because basically everyone other than that Sam is a Gondor companion, and we're just deliberately exerting everyone. So this is a site that's really nice to, if you're double moving and skipping that Sanctuary, double moving in the regroup phase, you can do that because you're going to get the same or potentially more healing by healing every single Gondor companion. Then the Osgiliath Channel. Spot your minion and 6 companions to make the Free People's player choose to move again this turn. Again, I think that's nice for Dunland just to make your opponent move again so that it's more likely that you do a massacre by forcing the double move. Then Morgul Vale, remove 2 threats to make your Sauron minion strength +3. Well, why is this in here? Just because, again, Dunland doesn't have a site 8, so you've just got to pick one. And this has a nice, healthy site number, and also, again, not going to help your opponent's side unless they're playing as besiegers. And lastly, we have Slag Mounds. Again, I don't know exactly if this is going to do a lot for us, but it's a 9, and each time a companion is killed, you add a burden. So yeah, I'm not too high on that site 9 with Dunland, but that's the one we're playing. So that is our Sitepath. Thanks again for watching, guys. Appreciate all the views and all the support.